welcome everybody. Today we're talking to a special, very special guest, Mr. Jim Gale, who is the heart of food forest abundance in Florida. And he has dedicated his life to resilient living and freedom. And that's given rise to his food forest abundance movement because he's been inspired by permaculture. But more than me explaining who you are, Jim, and your presence has grown and you're now like such a well-known face in permaculture, in just growing your own food abundantly. Tell us what got you started on this journey, and how did you come to decide to live this way, and what are you doing now?
Well, thank you so much. It's such a wonderful thing that you brought me on to share with everybody listening. What brought me here, I would say, if I had to point out one thing, I would say it was failure and desperation.
How is that? Explain. What does that mean?
Well, about 18 years ago, I learned that the world is controlled by people who don't have the best intentions in mind, by ignorant people who have suffered trauma. And then through their trauma, which then trauma is the catalyst for things like greed and ignorance and pain and suffering. So what I learned is that the way we are using our resources from the top down, from the government down, is unsustainable, and that all unsustainable systems fail. And I had my first two daughters at that time. And I went into a period of scarcity, a period of concern, a period of worry, because I recognized quite clearly that we're destroying this earth. And that if we continue to destroy our land instead of being the stewards of our land, that I won't have grandkids and my kids are going to have horrible lives. And so I went into this period of fear. And then I read Bill Mollison's quote. And his quote was, "Though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple."
Oh, wow.
And that was about 16, 17 years ago. And from that, I started to bawl. Because I was ready, right? They say when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And I started to bawl. In fact, I can feel it now. And I decided at that moment to dedicate my life joyfully to stewardship, to learning how to be the best steward I could be. And that was like the first layer. Right. Previous to that, I'd started a mortgage company that did like $1.3 billion in revenue. I had all sorts of time and money, and I thought it was pretty cool. I thought I knew what was going on. Well, as I went into this kind of scarcity field, I started investing everything I had into proving the solutions. And like anything, when you start out new, you're ignorant. I was so ignorant, and I still am in infinite ways. But there's one thing that I've learned, and I know for certain, and that is when we achieve mass adoption, right, of stewardship, which simply means permaculture, which means taking the poisons out and using our resources wisely. When we achieve mass adoption and we then follow Dr. Martin Luther King's advice, Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war." And when I started contemplating and making the intention, right, I set the intention to do the best I possibly could, all things considered. Well, about 4 years ago, I found myself, actually it was 5 years ago, I found myself dead broke. I had invested everything. And I still not had found the solution. And solutions come in layers, right?
Did you say 4 years ago? Just 4 years ago?
It was actually 5. Now I recollect it was 2019 when I borrowed 50 grand and I got credit card debt to start a business. Now I had burned through everything. I had $20 million. I burned through it all in net worth. And now I was broke, and I borrowed 50 grand, and I had good credit. I still have good credit. So I racked up credit card debt, and I started a business, a kiosk in a mall. And it was November 2019 when we opened. And the kiosk was a living kiosk with all sorts of natural solutions to problems, health and wellness and permaculture. And it was open for 3 months and it was doing really well. And then the COVID narrative
Oh my,
landed upon us.
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh,
And
Jim.
then nobody went to the mall. It was done. And so that's when I was really, really in fear and desperation. Having, a family to feed, bills to pay. I went for a walk one night and I was just confused and frustrated and scared. And I was also angry. I was aware that the COVID narrative is a scam. And I did what I had not yet done. I surrendered
Mm,
completely.
mm.
I completely surrendered and I asked for help. I gave
Wow.
it all up. I said, I'm done. I don't know what to do. God help me.
Oh, Jim. This is, I mean, one of the main things that we do is also like putting the faith in
Yes.
the what we do. And when you mentioned stewardship, I was going to ask you how what role did what role did faith play in all of this?
It's fundamental. Faith and courage is a frequency, it's an energy field. It is quite literally the armor of God. And I stepped into it. And I'll never forget the second when I shut my eyes and I was weeping and I opened my eyes and I could see clearly again, more clearly than I could ever see. And it was so crazy. I went home and I grabbed my wife. I said, babe, I said, and I felt it. I felt a tangible shift in my energy, a feeling of enlightenment again, right? A feeling of like, it's going to be okay. And I went home and I said, babe, let's sit and meditate for a little bit. And the intention was, how are we going to pay rent? How are we going to pay our bills? And we meditated for like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, the most obvious thing, right? And that's how it is. There is energy all around us. There's solutions all around us. But we get so stuck in our loop, in our thought process, in our thought hurricane that we don't see past the veil. Well,
Mm,
the veil had been lifted. So a few minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, we had put some silver away, some silver coins. And we really kind of said, this is only for emergencies. We're going to forget about this until if we ever need it. Well, we needed it. I made a call to my buddy Brian, who lives right over here. I go, Brian, I'd like to sell some of my silver and gold. And are you interested in buying it? He goes, yeah. In fact, I was just online looking to buy some more silver and gold. So in 20 minutes, we now had about $33,000 to play with.
wow.
And then I wrote a letter. I heard that Del Bigtree was coming to visit.
Who is that?
And Del Bigtree is the founder of the High Wire, which is a big program basically about the pandemic and about everything that happened. And I wrote him a letter and I said, Del, here's what's going on and here's the solution to it all. And he read it and he said, oh my God, I love this. And in the meantime, I had put the word out to our local community that I would build garden beds, raised beds, and I would install permaculture food forests for people. So I had a few jobs in between the time I wrote the letter, the time he said, wow. And then he did a 33-minute film. He had a crew come here and they filmed me telling the story about what's possible. And it went out and the phone started ringing. And then now here we are 4 years later, and we are free and clear. We live 100% off grid.
What?
Yep.
100%. So you have
Yep.
solar, you have all the everything.
Yes.
Oh my.
Yes. Now, this is our blank canvas.
Mm.
Right over on the other side, our house will be done in about 2 weeks. And right on the other side, we have a food forest that we put in the ground 3 years ago. And it already provides way more than enough food to feed our families. We also have chickens and we have a pond with fish in it. And now this was a construction zone. And this is our 1.1 acre family homestead. and I just started putting fruit trees in the land. We have persimmon and pomegranate and avocado and aloe and sweet potato leaves on the ground and sugarcane and guava and longan and lychee and papaya and moringa and loquat. And it's it's amazing. We voluntarily follow the permaculture ethics of people care, earth care, and reinvesting our surplus to people care and earth care. So service has been the strategy that we are using. And a government agent came here 18 months ago or so, and he asked to see building permits. And I had a wave of fear and adrenaline go through my body. And then I took a deep breath and I decided a few years back, I will never be motivated by fear again. Instead, you cannot stand in faith and in fear at the same time. So I pick faith because it's the most logical thing I could pick. So anyway, this government agent came and he said, Jim, yeah, I'd love to see your building permits. And I said, well, first of all, how did you get permission to come on this land? Implied consent is not granted, and it's posted. And I expected him to be like a government agent. And by the way, I was filming the conversation and I shared it. I said, I'm filming this conversation so we don't mix up any words. And he said, well, the gate was open, so I came in, but I will leave if you want me to. And I'm like, oh, that's I thought he was going to kind of act puffy. Well, he didn't. He was actually a really nice guy, and I'm friends with him to this day. And so I said, well, before you leave, I'd like to show you something. So we walked from the house here to the food forest, which is like 100 yards away. And we stood in the middle of the food forest. And I shared with this fella, his name is Alexi. I said, Alexi, it is our duty to our posterity and to everything we love about life to be the stewards of this land, to protect and serve this land. It is my duty to do the right thing in this land. And as a result of your agency, the agency that you represent, you can see what happens to every HOA community up and down the road. These are biological death zones. The people are suffering and the land is suffering. You have lost your agency. The government has lost its moral authority. Quite frankly, it never had a moral authority. And so I cannot comply with your system. Instead, we are using voluntarism and stewardship. And he got tears in his eyes. And he said, you're right. I will never bother you again.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible story, Jim.
Yeah.
For real, this happened like 18 months ago?
And they haven't been back.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll just pray that they don't ever come back. But we came from an HOA, so that's why we live here. Where we live now, I'm here just to try to make things stable in my room. But we live now in a 3-acre place in Virginia, about an hour from Washington D.C. But we used to live in the suburbs. 1/40th of an acre shady backyard with an HOA gym where the pine needles fall, and then there's a truck that comes and gathers the pine needles from underneath to haul them away somewhere else. But and of course we got cited every year, and until I was starting to cry. But it was good. We still had hosted demo garden days
Yes.
in a tiny townhouse with like a food forest. But that's all to say that it's inspiring. You can do it. So when you say 5 years ago, thank you, by the way, Allan, for joining us. So everyone who's watching this recording, and I'm sorry that it's just like I mentioned to Jim, we are going to spread the word. Some things start out small and will spread quickly, little by little rather. But just as you guys and your movement has spread, this recording will be shared and with you guys and with more people in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Nikki, you said one thing. Good to see you, Allan. Good to see you, brother. And I'll just make a point, and then I'd love Allan to jump in. So you said, I hope they don't come back. Well, quite frankly, I do too. But we're prepared for that. We have cameras, and we are demonstrating solutions and stewardship in such a way where if they do come back with force and violence, they will be on film.
Mm.
right? And the wicked, the dark, they do not like to be in the light. They don't want to be on film, which is why they're not coming back, right?
Mm.
And then I'll share too. Permaculture is looking at the patterns to the details, right? And this is where I'm farsighted, right? I can. It's been my modus operandi, my metaphor for who I am for a long time. I can see a long ways, but I'm not real good at seeing the details up close. So permaculture is patterns to details, and they're all equally important, right? It's just a matter of how do we integrate the patterns and the details, and then how do we bring in the energy systems of our world, right? The biggest energy systems, the schools, the hospitals, the prisons, right? The police force, the military. How do we shift the dial a little bit to create awareness whereby when we use these same energy systems wisely, and I'll give you a real concrete example. When all of a sudden permaculture or regenerative agriculture, stewardship is added to the school curriculum of every school, if that's the only thing that happened, every school would become a nursery and we would solve all of the world's biggest problems. And there's only two reasons not to do this: ignorance and evil, right? So we're shining a light on the benefits of it, the science, the numbers, the financial benefits, the politics, and the health benefits. And then it's getting such an energy around it that now presidential candidates and people are meeting with me to talk about how to do it. And it's so exciting. And so,
That was what
Allan,
that was why you were in the White House for, was introducing permaculture to the school
th-
system.
yeah, that's why I met with Bobby Kennedy, and I laid out for him the Maha strategy in great detail way before the Maha name was spoken. Right? It's about stewardship, taking the poisons out and integrating these elements, these energetic systems. And Allan is my partner, and he's an incredible guy with the details, right? Representing food forest abundance and the design features of permaculture. So I'm going to be quiet now and just listen.
Well, wait, thank you so much, Jim. And Alan, just to introduce you a little bit, Alan is joining us from Costa Rica, where he currently lives with his wife and three kids, a dog, and a small but fun food forest. He is a lot of fun. You love to sing and play guitar, and he practices permaculture design and education for the local youth, and they run a local youth camp, he and his wife, and for the greater community online, where that is indeed great. He has a large online community that he supports in several places. So, Alan, it is such an honor to learn from you and Jim today. Please share what you'd like to tell us about
Thanks.
permaculture in
Thanks,
subtropical.
Nikki. Yeah, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. In 2021, I joined Food Forest Abundance, and I always say that Jim, yeah, like he says, he's a person that sees the patterns and creates the pattern structure to get an army behind him to work on this. And that's how I got attracted to Food Forest Abundance. And there's also like a big pool of people being attracted to this mission and to basically creating food forest everywhere. And now that pattern is actually getting more specific, like Jim said, with schools and prisons and churches, which are kind of like in a way like common areas that we can all influence. There's a lot of people that say like, oh, I cannot practice permaculture because I don't have a garden or something like that. But there's so
Oh,
many common areas like those that can be influenced. And actually, that's how I started my permaculture journey. I originally I was thinking about moving into to like an eco village and living a really holistic and regenerative lifestyle with like-minded people. But then I realized that that wasn't really a reality for me. The reality for me was where I was in the moment, and from there start practicing permaculture. So basically integrating all of the systems that I was a part of. So now every time I'm part of a new system, integrating all of the permaculture teachings into that new system. And that's why we started our youth education program. So my kids go to a Montessori learning center here in Costa Rica. And, it was just natural for, I didn't think it made sense for like my kids be like in an education system that I couldn't really be a part of. So, and how can I be a part of? Through the things that I know and I'm passionate about, and that was permaculture. So we offer a youth education program at my son's kindergarten, and at my oldest son's school, the same thing. As soon as he got in, I introduced myself to the principal, told them all about permaculture and of its possibilities, and they were all in. And now they've given us a community food forest space that we help out with families. And the harvests from the food forest are great, but it's not only that. It's about the community building, right, and the resilience. And I think that's also what Jim is doing in Gods. It's like, it's not about like us being selfly reliant. It's about like being community reliant, right? It's about creating systems with the people in our community to be able to thrive as a community, because it doesn't make sense to thrive oneself and nobody else around you thriving. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, you know, and I'm really excited to still be in it.
Yes, and I think that's one thread. I mean, we share a lot of threads, permaculture being one, but we also started permaculture because of our kids having allergies, and then from our kids having allergies, we were asked, we didn't know what we were doing, got certified in permaculture, started dabbling, and all of a sudden, lots of people coming to us to ask, you know, how do you do this? And then going to the schools, getting grants in the schools, in the unused spaces of our Title I school in, you know, in a 54 countries represented in that school, that where we came from, with a tiny townhouse. So we had immigrants from everywhere because we were close to Washington, D.C. It's very, very cosmopolitan, but at that time, you know, we're still kind of close, but here it's a little less, but still in the schools, you know, going there, and the same thing as what you said, introduce yourself to the principal, and here I am, I'm your farmer for career day and everything, and let's start a garden here. So yeah, community is so important. Like, we, all of us have an online presence, but also a local presence that's so important to the farmers who we meet, the community here that are coming this Saturday, for instance. We have a workshop. But tell me, a lot of our friends, so our online community that I'm supporting with this, and I'm surprised that nobody came from them live, because they're the ones who are asking for a Subtropical Permaculture webinar, had questions specifically about those, and some of them I've shared with you about. If somebody were growing in Florida, for instance, Jim, or coastal Georgia, Savannah, and Allan, would you consider yourself subtropical as well, or how are you guys different in your flora? How did you guys get started in terms of planting stuff? Like, how did you know what to plant? Because my clients are still planting things that are not necessarily moringa. I mean, maybe they have moringa, but still, I think variety wise, knowing what to plant for that climate, because what you have is in your head is the pears and the peaches and the plums, and maybe that's not what you need to grow. So tell us a little bit more about that, either one of you.
Allan, would you like to jump in? He is the master at this stuff. I'm learning from him.
So does he tell you what to plant, Jim?
Yeah, Eleanor and Allan and our design team, they are the detail. They're the gurus. Like I said, I'm learning from them every day.
So yeah, from the way that I approach it is, you need to understand your local ecosystem pretty much. So whenever I go do a site visit, obviously I don't know all the climates, but whenever I go to do a site visit, I do a couple of research before, like a little bit of research beforehand, but also I try to go there a couple of days before or stay a couple of days after, so I can actually observe the local ecosystem. There's a couple of things. Understanding most of the yards, which is the clients that we work with, and probably that you're talking about, are ecosystems that are at the beginning of the succession. Really, you know, they're at the grass stage, and that's early succession. And in those climates that you told me, those climates mainly want to go towards being a forest. So I am in a tropical climate, so it's a little bit different. Jim is in a subtropical, and has like a lot of sand in his soil. I have a lot of loam in my soil, depending on the different areas of Costa Rica. So understanding and then there's also soil succession, right? So you can have like plant succession, which is, you can see it by, you know, kind of like the size of your plants, and then you also have like soil succession. So for example, normally a soil that can hold like a lot of like life on it is a soil that is full of life, right? So you need to create that ecosystem to be able to support life on it. In Florida, where Jim is at, you know, they brought the way that they went about soil succession was they brought in wood chips, which is, you know, a very available resource in the area, because that's what the tree companies do, right? They cut trees and then they put them into wood chips, and then they have to just put them in a wood chip yard. But you can ask for them, and they can bring them to your place, and most of the times in a lot of times for free. And sandy soils, like Jim has, is the best acceptor of wood chips, because the wood chips act almost as the bones of the system, and they bind to a lot of minerals. So in the sandy soil, when you're irrigating, like the minerals get washed away really fast, so it's hard to like create like life in the soil. But the wood chips create a huge condition for that.
Can I show you a little bit?
Please.
So I just actually put these wood chips down. So we had a little rain the other day, and this is brand new moved dirt. So when we had the rain, it was splashing all the dirt here. I put wood chips all along the edge of here, right? And then eventually the whole thing will be covered with wood chips. So you can see the wood chips here and here and here. And you can see the older wood chips as a base right over here. And then we put these down about a year and maybe a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And then we put sweet potatoes and beans, and we kind of tilled it in. And now we're adding another layer of wood chips, and then we'll put all of our ground cover plants in and so on.
I love it. Oh, wow. So wood chips for sandy soils. I did not know that. And
Yes,
and that accelerates do you do any composting aside from that?
big time. In fact, I want to give everybody a little tip. There is an entity in the United States called chipdrop.com. It's CHIP, chipdrop.com. So the first $15,000 worth of mulch we purchased, and we spread it all over this about 8 acres of land. And then we got in touch with the local municipality, the tree trimming people, and they have now given us about $100,000 worth of mulch for free. In fact, probably more,
Mm.
because they needed somewhere to dump it. So people can either knock on some doors of the tree trimmers in the area, or you can go on chipdrop.com and you can sign up to receive deliveries. There's no schedule. They happen when they happen, right? But if you want that stuff, you can make it happen.
Yes, I have been a recipient of chipdrop.com. And one tip is if you want to be on the head of the list, you can add like $25 or $20, I think, and then you get it faster, but of course you don't know when. Are you going to go outside too, Alan, and show us your garden?
Yeah. So kind of like what I was saying before is like everybody has like a different like eco region. So understanding like succession is going out to like the side of the road and seeing what grows there, and that can be all of those plants can be the start of your succession. You don't like, of course you can like very deliberately pick ground covers, like Jim was saying. The sweet potatoes are huge because they give you a harvest. You can eat the leaves. They fix nitrogen in the soil. You can get the perennial peanut that also Jim has in that climate that is really nice to walk on. So this can be really, really deliberate, or you can do it with what you find by observation. So I think like us being in the permaculture space gave us a little bit of that kind of like light of being able to observe what is needed for an ecosystem. But everybody can train that eye, and the more you engage with your ecosystem, the more you train that eye. You start seeing like nuances that that only you're going to pick up, because now you're being a part of that ecosystem, right? The ecosystem is informing you. You're another being in it. So yeah, it's a lot about observation, and we guide people through that observation journey. We tell them what to look at. So
How do you, as you're walking around and you're looking for places to show us, how do you guide us, Alan, from Food Forest Abundance, if anybody wanted to know and was, needed a guide or a mentor to show them how to go through that process?
Yeah, great. So 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation, an initial consultation with a lady in one of the outer islands of the east of Canada. And I was looking at her ecosystem, and she was telling me, like there's a lot of like strong winds that come through here. It's really sandy soil. So we started looking around, right, in her own neighborhood. And okay, we were like, okay, we have, we need to address the wind, because it kind of like, it brings a lot of salt, so it's really harsh on the ecosystem, on your food forest. And then you also need to understand what's the soil condition. So we walked around the neighborhood, and we found this clump of kind of like evergreen trees, mostly conifers that were really well established and doing really well. And sometimes you would say like, okay, like that's nothing, or I don't know, you wouldn't really pay attention to that, but that little ecology there is creating like a huge windbreak for what's behind it or what's inside of it. So we were like, okay, we can go in here, identify which species are in here, and actually create a barrier for your own place that includes these. Then you're also at the beginning of the succession of your soil. So we need to find a way of improving the soil so it can hold water, and so it can hold life. So similar to what Jim has done, we encourage her to find wood chips to continue the succession of that soil. And then a third, since it's a hard climate, and also here where it's all about like saving energy and stacking functions, start small, right? Start with like abundance islands. Don't start like, okay, I'm going to put an apple tree there and an apple tree there, and I'm going to start like spreading out my plantings. No, start like in your zone 1. It's things that you can observe, that you can learn from. Start with bushy plants that are going to adapt to that ecosystem, and then inside of that, plant your high value fruit tree, create a little abundance situation that then you can expand from. So yeah, that's for different places there's probably different steps, but this food forest that I have here, let's see if I can change my camera around.
And by the way, what location was your client in that you were helping?
She was like a 4 or a 5, like a growing hardiness.
Oh wow! Yeah. So okay, wow.
Yeah,
that is
tough.
I mean, there's a lot that I'm learning from you all, but like one thing that you mentioned before in a different workshop, Allan, was the perennials. Like, why are we not eating more perennial vegetables?
Yeah.
And then and I've dove into it a little bit more because we've written a blog on it in the past, but I've been revisiting it because of what you said and other questions of clients of mine on perennials. And then I've found that a great, and this is a details thing, a great resource is Eric Tonsmeyer. He had like a whole top 10 perennial, he had a whole study on it that's open source, perennial vegetables that you can grow. And I'll tell them maybe later, but show us what you have. Sorry, and I'll go outside as well while you.
No, so yeah, I think like the perennial topic is interesting. Like this is like a realization that I had while studying mainly syntropic agroforestry systems that talk about the different stages of succession. And annual plants, like I showed you here in the beginning, annual plants are beginning of the succession, and actually they're genetically modified to not be that resilient. Actually, to be you need to give them everything they need. Like for example, an annual lettuce or something comes originally from something like a dandelion. These guys need like a lot of like protection, and a lot of nutrition to thrive. They don't really this doesn't really thrive without like amending the soil. So these guys, like, yeah, it's fine, we can eat them and they grow fast, but they're like early succession of an ecosystem. And in syntropic agroforestry, we design like all the succession stages from like the initial of the succession, which are kind of like those types of plants, all the way until like the mature system. So your fruit trees, your nut trees. There are some nut trees in Brazil called the Brazilian nut that start producing fruit only when they're like around like 30 years old or something like that, and then they produce fruit for like hundreds of years. So imagine eating instead of eating like something like a lettuce or a beet that has only been on the ground for, like 60 days or something, imagine eating from a tree that has been in that ecosystem for like 100 years. How much wisdom are you going to receive from that fruit, compared to the annual? So I think there's also like, in a way that we're eating right now, there's also like an immaturity in how human beings act in this world, and you can see it. There's a lot of like childish acting in a way. And if we're eating from perennial systems, the system is going to give us like more mature wisdom that we can learn from and use in our daily lives and approach life in that way. So for me, yeah, eating from perennial systems.
I walked outside. Tell us what we're seeing in front of us right now, and what is your guild composed of in a tropical climate, and can we transpose some of that where we live here in different parts of America? What will grow, what will not grow, in as far as you know, Allan?
Yeah. So here, this is basically like, this is a side yard, very small. You can see like all the abundance that is in this like really small yard. There's only sun only half of the year. So again, this system goes dormant half of the year. Now the sun is coming back. This was grass, so very early succession system. From there, I planted corn, squash, tomatoes, and some herbs. That was like my next stage of succession. And then from there, I planted turmeric, taro, so kind of like root crops. Yes. And then in between that, I started planting this like intermediate succession, which is the papayas, the bananas, and stuff like that. And now, these are edible leaves. This is called chicasquil, relative to the chaya in the tropical, so kind of like a tree spinach.
Yes.
And then like late succession, which is actually, these plants I'm not actually going to keep, but I have like a little bit of a living nursery here. I have like 10 avocados growing here. This one.
That's your avocado nursery.
Yeah, avocado nursery. And actually, this has been a nursery for like another like 5 food forests that I planted in the area. And I think like Jim specializes in that as well, because everywhere he goes, he takes cuttings. So I learned from that as well, of like, hey, everything that I plant needs to be able to be propagatable. So I have a mulberry, and I have taro, and I have a lot of plants that I can get from cuttings that then I can propagate. All these bananas can be propagated really easy as well. So
wow. So mid-succession is what's happening right now. What would your ultimate, the climax of this food forest side yard?
Yes. So my climax is going to include plants like this one, which is a Suriname cherry, which are like little bushes, just because I just don't have space to have a big tree here. So my ultimate succession is going to be like Suriname cherry, support species like this one that is also edible. I don't know exactly the name of this one, but it's an edible flower.
Oh.
Jaboticaba, star fruit here, another Suriname cherry, and then a lot of like in the understory, a lot of herbs, Juanilama, and yeah, so berries and herbs are gonna be the end system here.
Wow, and that is amazing. That's the last part. Jim, do you want to share? I don't know if you're still on. I'm also on my phone, so I'm not sure who. Yeah, there you are.
Yes.
Do you want to share on your end? Like, you've shared some of your stuff. Did you have any?
Yeah. This is another area. This area was put in the ground it'll be 3 years in April. Right. This is an ice cream bean tree, and we just came out of the coldest January on record. Look at the size of that ice cream bean tree. Isn't that amazing? And there's avocados and bananas all over the place. I love this little area here. So what we've done is we've started using our food forest as a nursery, and we are propagating so many plants. We've probably given away over 1,000 or sold, mostly given away, over 1,000 different plants, from bananas and sweet potatoes are one of our favorites to give away. And now we're using the propagations to create this nursery to transform this area into a food forest that looks like this area. Within 2 years, it will be absolutely incredible.
Oh my goodness. It already looks incredible. Anything that's for me is incredible. I think one of the things that both of you gentlemen have inspired, reminded us to do, is those that point. One, Allan, establishing, not just putting islands out there was one thing that you said. One thing that Allan said that I wanted to reiterate was not when we plan or design our gardens, not to design them in isolation, like having these islands out there so far away on a 3-acre property. We have sort of done that. So it's kind of good to hear that you have to cultivate the area first that you're working in before you introduce the star player of your show. And so the other difference I found, and I think this is like permaculture women difference, is that one value that we have is like in the at least as permaculture women, is that we also value like the aesthetics of the property. And that's what I got in the HOA trouble for a lot was. So this is what I'm going to try to transform into a French potager garden, like a kitchen garden, basically, with like elements of what I need. Bill Mollison used to say, if you wake up in the morning and make your omelets and you put on your fuzzy slippers and they get wet when you are coming back from getting chives for your omelet. I'm cultivating something here, but we're also cultivating a bunch of comfrey. And these are our dynamic accumulators here for building soil, which we're going to spread in our islands, Allan, now that you've mentioned it. I wonder what are your dynamic accumulators? And that means a term in permaculture where these are little comfrey root propagations that we're just doing here on the side. What are your equivalents of dynamic accumulators that you are propagating to start out and make your little islands where you are cultivated before you put in your star players or your fruit trees? Jim or Allan? Oh, you guys are muted.
Oh,
Sorry, my daughter called right when I was doing it, and she's just leaving the house. You guys, Allan's better at this than I am. I love you guys, and I've got to jump, but Allan, take it away.
Thank
See
you,
soon,
Jim.
Nikki.
Thank you.
yeah. So the dynamic accumulator concept is a very powerful one, of course, because it's for plants that like bring up nutrients mainly from the subsoils. I don't know here in the tropics exactly what plant kind of like acts as that function compared to stuff like comfrey and nettles in more temperate climates, which have been researched more, and they're the ones. Here, what I'm focused more is on plants that I can quickly get a hold of and that I can quickly propagate. So, for example, my main plant that does here in my climate is the Botón de Oro, which actually also is kind of like a dynamic accumulator because it creates a symbiotic relationship with a mycelium network that actually mines phosphorus from the subsoils, and then it brings it up to the Botón de Oro, to the Mexican sunflower leaves. So this is the Mexican sunflower. It doesn't have any flowers right now, at least that I don't see. And what I do a lot with this, it just grows really fast in this climate.
Yes.
And then it creates a lot of biomass. You can see, like, it's this is like a plant that I probably chopped less than a month ago, and it creates a lot of like organic matter. So I basically just chop it around. Here, like this Botón de Oro here is actually being a nurse for this little plant here that is a Suriname cherry. And the reason why it's being a nurse is because it's creating shade for this little plant here while we're in the middle of the dry season. So there's no water now. This little plant would suffer a lot if it would be 100% exposed to soil. This Mexican sunflower is creating shade for that. And once the rains come, I chop all the Mexican sunflower, put it around it. It creates fertility for that. It creates a growth pulse for that plant as well. And then, that plant gets all the energy of this other plant. And I kind of like repeat that cycle until this plant is big enough. Like, for example, this Mexican sunflower was also nursing this mango tree. And now the mango is already bigger than the Mexican sunflower. So it can like hold its own now. So
yeah, is that a tagetes? It's a sunflower, right? That's the biggest. Wow, that is such a big one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 100% a sunflower, but it's called the Mexican sunflower. The scientific name is a Titonia diversifolia.
Okay. Oh, wow. Well, maybe it is I mean, if that's what you're using it for, and so that's one of the people who are calling in. Andrea, especially, also has experienced a lot of drought, even in would you believe it, in subtropical coastal Georgia, a lot of drought all over. That is what one of your drought proofing techniques is, to grow those nurse plants that grow up fast but like the heat and can shade other plants.
Exactly. In drought areas, you need shade and you need water. So you need to so the shade kind of like provides the two functions, because it provides a function of helping the other plant out, so it doesn't like all evapotranspirate, and it also protects the water in the soil from it like evaporating as well.
Wow. And you also, there's so many, like your cover crops are things that are fast, like the sunflower or your other the things that you were showing there. I'm sorry that I don't know all the names of them, but
yeah. So also regarding the concept of cover crops,
yeah.
Yeah, for me, the way to do it is, if you're working with like a productive system, like let's say you want to plant corn, let's say, or you want to plant wheat, or you want to plant stuff like that you need big areas, and that you're going to be like kind of like rotating. I think that the concept of cover crop makes a lot of sense, because you're creating like an intermediate crop between your kind of like official crops that is going to bring a lot to the soil and is going to cover the soil, because when you harvest the wheat, you're uncovering all the soil, so you want a cover crop to cover it again. However, in a garden situation, you're trying to create like abundance in your islands, so your cover crops are actually your actual plants. Your cover crop can be a pollinator, or it can, the important thing is that you plant with enough density so that all the soil is covered. That's the important thing. But it doesn't have to be
An official.
Again, official. The same with dynamic accumulator. It's a concept, but if you don't like find the plant that creates that role, doesn't matter. You can put like another plant. The important thing is the biodiversity of root systems in your soil. Covering the soil is a concept that is super important. How you do it, it doesn't really matter. It can go like based on the plants that you find. It can go based on your creativity. You like some flowers of some different colors. You like some specific herbs. But yeah, it's kind of like the concept of like fast growing, and that it's going to cover the soil as quick as possible, and especially in drought conditions.
Wow. I hope you're not driving and doing the webinar.
No, we're actually going to the school right now, so I'm the co-passenger.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we have a few more minutes. I did want to share, in terms of cover crop, this is what I've been doing for those islands that we've been setting up and looking at taking out as we're this season. We've been excavating. We spent a few days excavating portions and trying to dig a long contour where we would put the fruit trees. But as we did, the areas that are now exposed, they kind of like tear at me because the soil is exposed. And we are microgreens farmers officially. So what I've been doing is all the spent trays of all the seedlings that we just cut, I've been putting them on the exposed soil to just peas or kale, even if it's kale, or radishes especially, to act as my cover crop or whatever. It has to be something, right? It might as well take something there and take root, and instead of just putting it in the compost bin. And I think that's one thing. You guys have gone farther, I mean, than me in this. And I feel like it's good because we have a permaculture base, but it's also with the experience comes knowing when to break the rules or those conformance because of the context that you're in. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that you've given me and anybody who's watching this recording through our short time together. So with that, do you have any closing words, Allan? We're just about the top of the hour, and for like tropical climates, permaculture.
No, I was gonna say that that example that you just gave is kind of like the essence of permaculture, really. Like it's like kind of like using what you have and
Yeah.
not being not being so kind of like dogmatic, like, because like we learn like concepts and sometimes we want to like apply them to the T, but there's a lot of like contextual, and that's what kind of like permaculture teaches as well, that we need to be like really contextual, and contextual can be like culture wise, but it can also be like household wise. So if you have like a resource that is, sprouting seeds from your microgreen business, and that's what you use as a cover crop, what a kind of like double function that you're doing there, right? So I think it's kind of like creating this openness that permaculture is a grassroots movement, and that we learn the principles, and we can apply them based on our context in a creative way, and we can learn from each other. So that's why I think like these talks are really important, because we can learn different nuggets from each other that we can then test. And then also, to at least a little bit of a plug, but like us in Food Forest Abundance, we help you out with this starting of your food forest. So we have all the way from consultations to full-on designs, where we understand all the niches of your microclimates in your garden, and we take you through a journey of connecting to your ecosystem, because again, the food nutrition is a big part, but being exposed to nature is a huge part. And Nikki, that you have kids as well, but like the biggest feedback that we get from our program here is that like the kids that do our program, because not all the kids in the kindergarten do it because it's an after school, the kids that do our program are much more inclined to testing out different textures with their hands, with their mouths and stuff like that, compared to like they're much more open sensorially than kids that don't have that experience. Kids that don't have that experience are much more, like they cannot touch things. They have a hard time, wearing different types of clothes, etc. And I think this happens to us adults too. Being exposed to nature like makes us like healthier all around. It's not just the food. It's being outside, it's connecting with the plants. So the food forest is a journey. Not just a result.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's so easy. This is me as well. Like when I and my clients, I'm sure, we're all like house moms, and we have our roles in the home, and a lot of it is zone zero. And zone zero is so like inside a box. But you have to, when you step outside, just to like step outside, and the weather allows you, and even if it doesn't, it is so opening to the soul that it's like you're so tiny compared to everything that's going right. And you think everything is going wrong and when you're in your tiny little box, but everything really, most of the stuff, if you contextualize it and open up to the whole of the earth and look up in the sky, it's going right. And we can just assist it. We just need like a little guidance, a little nudge from the designer to make it even more abundant, and the earth will take care of the rest of it. So I am so grateful for you again speaking wisdom here, Allan, and for Jim's story. And that really was wow, it was very moving to hear that. And those of you who haven't, Andrea, watched the replay of that one, it's kind of tear jerking. Allan, again, where can we find you and Jim? Where can we contact you?
So the best way to contact us, well, my email is allan@foodforestabundance.com, so you can email me directly there. Same with Jim at foodforestabundance.com. We also offer free strategy sessions. So if you go to our website, foodforestabundance.com, you can just click on the top button on the right, and it basically it takes you to like a calendar option to book a time with one of the designers, and we walk you through your process, and we tell you a little bit more about what we do and about our process. And then from there, you can decide if you want to continue with us, or what you got from us is enough to kick you off on the journey.
Yes, and that's all over the States and Canada, and North America, and Costa Rica, and South America too.
All over the world, yeah. We have a network of designers. We can guarantee that the designer that you get in the strategy session is going to be a designer in your region, but we have designers all over the region, so we have a lot of experience. If you end up deciding to buy a design through us, we will connect you to an experienced designer in your eco region. Mm-hmm. But in the strategy session, we'll give you like the main things to start looking at. And yeah, it's open for you to ask questions. So again, as I said, we have a lot of experience and we know how to work contextually, which is something that permaculture teaches. So so we'll be able to guide you to start to make your first steps.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Allan, and thank you for joining us, Andrea, and anybody else who's listening. So till the next time, bye.
Ciao, ciao.